The lantern light flickered low against the warped wood walls of the cabin, shadows crawling like restless spirits. He had not expected anyone this far out, not at this hour, and certainly not with a knock that faint, more like a whisper pressed against the door. Levi brushed dust from his palms and reached for the old Colt resting on the table, the one that had not left his sight since the war. The knock came again, softer still, like it was asking permission just to exist. He pulled the door open, slow and steady, and the desert wind carried in the smell of sweat, blood, and fear. Standing there was a girl, no older than 19, barefoot, her dress torn to rags, and a cloth clutched around her shoulders. She looked at him like someone who'd been hunted across miles of hell and had finally run out of places to fall. Her lips trembled, but her eyes held steady. She whispered, barely moving her mouth, as if even words hurt to speak. "I was sold for nothing." She pulled at the cloth, and when it slipped from her bruised skin, Levi staggered back like he'd been struck. Deep purple welts carved her shoulders, burns scored her arms, and across her collarbone was a brand, raw and blistered, still angry from the iron that had pressed into her just days ago. His heart stopped, not because of the horror carved into her flesh, but because she stood before him, still alive, still breathing, still refusing to fall. He had seen men in war with less pain written on them give up their ghosts without a sound, but she hadn't. She was still here, and that was something unholy and holy all at once. Levi stepped forward, coat in hand, and draped it over her shoulders without a word. She flinched at first, but when she realized he wasn't taking, wasn't grabbing, only giving, she let it stay. He guided her inside, sat her near the fire, and poured water from the kettle. She held the cup but didn't drink, just let the steam rise against her battered face. The silence between them stretched, not awkward, not empty, but heavy with truths unspoken. Finally, her voice cracked again. "They said I was payment. My father, his debts. Cards, whiskey, horses. He lost it all, so he gave me. Like I was a thing that could be passed across a table. And when the man took me, I thought it would end with the night. But it didn't." She stopped, eyes fixed on the flames, and for a moment Levi thought she'd turned to stone. He didn't ask her name, not then. He didn't need it. Names could come later. Right now, there was only survival, only the breath she kept dragging into her lungs despite the weight pressing down on her. Levi reached for the pot and set bread on the table. She glanced at it, hesitant, then reached slow, as if every movement was a test of whether she'd be struck. When she bit, her jaw trembled but she ate, and that small act felt like a victory against something larger than either of them. The night outside thickened. Coyotes howled far off, and the fire crackled low. Levi sat across from her, arms resting on his knees, watching the way her hands shook when she tried to lift the cup. She didn't meet his eyes, not yet. She was watching the door, always the door, like she knew at any moment it might burst open and drag her back. And Levi, he understood that fear. He'd lived with it too long himself, in trenches, in towns where law was just a word written on paper but never followed. He leaned back, voice steady. "If they come, they'll find me first." Her gaze finally slid to him. She searched his face, testing if he meant it, if he was another liar with easy words. After a long moment, she nodded once, just enough to show she'd heard. By dawn, trouble found its way up the trail. Levi was out splitting wood when he saw the rider, big man, scar dragging across his cheek, eyes dead as winter. Dust lifted behind his horse, steady and certain. Levi leaned on the axe handle, waiting. The man pulled up sharp, swung a leg over, boots heavy in the dirt. "Lost something," he said, voice like gravel. "A girl. Dark hair. Bruised. Might have stumbled this way. She belongs to Mr. Harper now. Bought and paid. Paper says so." Levi's jaw tightened. He spat to the side, slow. "Paper don't mean a damn thing out here. You see a girl beaten half dead, you don't bring her back. You bury the man who did it." The rider's lip curled. "Careful. Harper don't forgive men who get in his way." Levi didn't move, didn't blink. Then Harper's about to learn he ain't God. The man studied him, silence sharp between them, before he smirked. "Next time, I won't come alone." He tugged his reins, wheeled his horse, and vanished back into the rising sun. Levi stood there a long time, sweat trickling down his back though the morning was still cool. When he returned inside, the girl was standing near the window, watching, the coat wrapped tight. She hadn't spoken, but her eyes followed him now. Watching, measuring, wondering what kind of man she'd stumbled into the care of. Days passed slow, heavy with waiting. She stayed mostly in the small room behind the tack shed, silent except for the scrape of chair legs or the soft thud of bare feet across the floor. Sometimes she ate, sometimes not. And always, her eyes lingered on the horizon. Levi gave her space. He fixed the fence, hauled water, kept the fire alive. But each evening, he set food by her door, and each morning, the plate came back, a little lighter than before. One afternoon, she stepped out into the sunlight, still wrapped in his coat, still walking careful, as if the ground might break under her feet. Levi was mending the gate, hammer in hand. She stopped a few feet from him, voice low. "Can I help?" He didn't look up right away, just extended the hammer. "You know how to swing one of these?" She shook her head. He set a nail, handed her the hammer. "Then today you learn." It wasn't much. Just a gate, a few nails. But when she drove the first one in, her lips parted, a flicker of something passing through her eyes. Maybe relief, maybe strength, maybe both. For the first time since she'd stepped through his door, she wasn't only surviving. She was building. And Levi, watching her hands steady as she swung again, knew that meant more than all the sermons in all the churches he'd ever sat through. The peace didn't last. It never does. Just before sundown, the dogs began to bark, low and sharp. Levi stepped to the porch, rifle in hand, eyes narrowing against the dying light. Dust clouds rose on the trail, 3 riders this time, moving fast. At the front rode Harper himself, dressed in fine clothes that didn't hide the rot beneath his skin, flanked by 2 men built for breaking bones. Levi's grip tightened on the rifle. Inside, he felt her watching through the curtain. Harper dismounted slow, taking off his gloves like he owned the land he stepped on. His voice cut the quiet. "You've been hiding what's mine." Levi stepped off the porch, calm. "Steady. You been beating what ain't yours to touch." Harper's smile dropped, his eyes darkened. "That girl was bought. Papers signed. She's my wife by law." Levi spat in the dirt. "Law don't mean a thing when a man's soul is rotten." The goons moved first. One lunged left, quick but clumsy. Levi swung the rifle stock hard, cracking against his jaw with a sound that split the evening still. The other drew iron, but Levi was faster, one shot tearing the silence, dust rising as the man crumpled. Harper froze, gloves still dangling from his hand. Levi stepped forward, breath even. "You ride back and tell whoever sold you her that the debt ain't yours to collect anymore. And if I see your shadow on this dirt again, I won't be warning. I'll be digging." Harper's throat bobbed, eyes darting between the body and the barrel of Levi's gun. He backed toward his horse, climbed up shaky, and rode off without another word. The dust settled slow. Levi lowered the rifle, chest tight. When he turned back, she was standing in the doorway, not hiding anymore. Her face wasn't free, not yet, but the tremor was gone. She walked down the steps, stopped beside him. For the first time, she lifted her chin high. "You don't even know my name," she said. Levi looked at her, the fire in her eyes brighter than the sun bleeding out behind the hills. "Don't need it," he said. "Not to know you're worth fighting for." Weeks passed. Harper never returned. The land grew quiet again. She worked alongside him, fixing fences, tending chickens, cooking meals she barely touched herself but insisted on making. And little by little, her laughter, faint, fragile, found its way back into the air. One morning, though, Levi noticed she hadn't come to breakfast. He found her sitting on the edge of the cot, hands pressed tight to her stomach. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. But her eyes told him enough. He sat beside her, slow. The silence stretched until she whispered, "What if what grows inside me is his?" Levi rubbed his palms, stared out the window where sunlight poured across the dirt. Then it's yours now. And it don't carry his sin. Only what you give it. Her breath shook, a tear breaking loose, but she didn't look away. And when he put a hand on her shoulder, she leaned into it, not like someone falling, but like someone choosing to stay. From that day, there was no hiding. He walked into town with her at his side, sat beside her in church, bought blankets from the same store where Harper once strutted. Folks whispered, but folks always whisper. Levi didn't care. He knew what mattered wasn't the noise of cowards but the choice of standing firm. Months later, the desert bloomed, rare and short-lived, but brilliant all the same. She sat on the porch, belly rounded, sewing small clothes by hand. Levi worked the field, glancing up now and then, and for once, the world didn't feel cruel. It felt earned. And in the quiet of that moment, the truth burned clear. The strongest fight a man can choose isn't with guns or fists, but with the choice to hold close what the world tried to throw away. So I'll ask you, could you do the same? Could you love someone branded with another man's cruelty? Could you raise a child born of shame and make it something holy instead? Could you stand when the law says you're wrong, but your soul knows you're right? Because being a man ain't just about the battles you win, it's about what you choose to keep, even when it hurts, especially then. And if this story stirred something in you, don't leave it quiet. Let it breathe. Hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss the next tale. Because the fight between what's owed and what's right, it ain't done yet, not by a long shot.